Hello friends, welcome to episode 114 of Storyteller Conclave. This is a show all about helping you run the best tabletop role-playing game that you can, whether you're a new storyteller or dungeon master learning the craft, or an experienced storyteller looking to take your game to the next level. I'm Sarah.
I'm Rob.
How are you doing, Rob?
I don't know, you're on vacation.
I'm the one on vacation.
Yes.
We are feeling tired physically and great spiritually.
Good for you, good for you.
We're redoing the craft room in the house, so like my miniature painting space, my terrain making space, and stuff like that is all getting redone this week.
Yep.
Taking the big trip to IKEA with your help on Saturday. So
Gotta help you get your stuff.
Man, I'm probably gonna take some pictures and post it up on like our Instagram and stuff like that. Of the new mini.
Oh, you should. You should. Like you do it in the layers of like empty space, stuff in space, filled stuff in space.
Yeah.
Satisfaction.
I really should have taken like a pre-shot of the gigantic mess that was the room beforehand. But honestly, it's a little embarrassing. So, we had your D&D game this weekend, though.
We did.
Oh, so how do you feel that went?
I felt it went pretty well. I feel that because it was literally just a boss fight. Like that's effectively what it was. It was the climax, the major climax to one of my quests in Act 3, and the continuing adventure with the orcs. And I was able to do. I was prepared virtually, but not physically. And so you helped me get prepared physically and get my terrain and some orcs painted up.
Yeah, we had
a master painting session, basically.
Marathon painting session the night before.
Yeah. And that worked out honestly fantastically.
Sean 3D printed off a model of a interdimensional portal for you.
Yep, and you did some fine airbrushing.
Got that painted up. Employed the airbrush. I'm trying to. I was just telling you before the show. I'm trying to get that. Trying to do some more airbrushing, more and more.
Yeah.
So I've actually got a new air compressor coming in tomorrow and such like that. So
well, it'll be fun because I've been the next place where you guys are going in the campaign is actually the bowels of a mountain. And I have to start working on the terrain for those scenes. And I've got ideas. I kind of know where I want to go with that. But as I started drafting through ideas, I think I have a better way to go. And I'm probably going to lean back into the same foam core that I had and layering it to get the effect that I want.
Okay.
But I may do it in pieces, like sections, so that it works better.
Yeah.
But really got some interesting ideas for it. I think it'll work out pretty well, and I think it'll be fun.
Good.
For the group, because I think seeing it physically was a wonderful thing for everybody to come back to as the first physical session again.
It's always a good feeling when you put all that work into building some really nice miniatures, really nice terrain, so that you have it all painted up, sitting on the table looking picturesque.
Yes. And
just watching the expression on your players' faces when you reveal that.
It's like bringing a fine meal to the table.
Oh, it is.
It
is.
Comes off of it.
When
you love that.
When you serve them, risotto and beef Wellington.
Yeah.
And watching everybody just look at their plates, like I kind of don't want to eat this.
Yeah.
Because it would make it go away.
Yeah. Exactly. But it felt good. There are some pieces that will be getting posted up on the Instagram, so you can see that. We're actually going to do a walkthrough of the build for the Patreon members, so you'll actually get to see from start to finish how I built the piece of terrain that I needed, and some of the shots of the individual orcs as I went through them and their stage process, to kind of get a feel for. And again, I'm not an artist. I am not an artist by any means. I'm terrible at color matching. It's not my forte. But I think it came out really well for what I wanted to get out of it.
I agree. I think it came out really well, yeah.
I think it'll be fun. I think it'll be a lot of fun. So,
how do you feel like the boss encounter went? Because I know you had him all cooked up as like a legendary creature, and you were like, you gave us the warning beforehand. You're like, this is going to be an epic battle. You may die.
Yep. I did do that.
We killed him on turn 3?
Turn 3 was pretty much the end of his battle, and turn 4 was the end of the fight. Yeah. Honestly, it was either going to be that or a slogfest. And it could have gone either way with dice, and you guys just had the dice. The dice were there for you. Your movements, again, you're a good coordinated group. You're 3 acts into a story.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you know what you're
we need
doing.
to do.
Yeah, and you know your fortes. You know when the failure points are going to come in. I would one day love to see you guys have to run from a fight.
Sure.
But and at any point it could have turned in that direction. Honestly, the way that I saw that fight going, like I said, is that I had a determination of what the steps were going to be in the fight regardless, and how far they were willing to go. And it just turned in your favor, and they ran. Some of them ran as soon as they realized what was going on, but I mean, 2 turns in, it's barely recognizing what's going on.
Yeah.
So
that's 12 seconds in, you've had just enough time to process you're being attacked.
Right.
Let alone how that fight's going.
Exactly. So, I didn't even get to stage some of the other later parts of the fight, which were definitely going to slog it out even further, and maybe change up how the ending would have gone. But I still think we had a miraculous event occur that had nothing to do with the fight.
Yeah. We got a cleric drop a divine intervention and
roll a 1.
And roll a 1 on it.
Not
which is
in
good.
a bad way. Like
for those of you not familiar, divine interventions for clerics in 5th edition, you have to roll under your cleric. It's an ability you receive at level 10, which is where we are, and you have to roll at or under your cleric level, so it's a 10% chance of working.
Yeah.
And rolled a 1.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Rolled the highest possible result, effectively. And so on the spot, I had to come up with a solution based upon the situation presented to me.
Basically, the wish that this cleric put forth.
Yeah, which I think worked out just fine. Gave you guys the information. I think I made it as valuable as it could have possibly have been.
No, I think it was great.
Yeah,
I think it was great. I mean, I wouldn't sweat the outcome of that. I think you handled it perfectly as a storyteller.
Thank you.
From a player standpoint, I thought the game was perfect. I thought that the pacing was very good.
Thank you.
You kind of had a sort of like fast, like cinematic combat scene afterwards as like waves of enemies were coming at us, and you were like kind of breaking it down into like almost a skill challenge.
Yeah.
Where you basically asked us what resource we were going to consume to fight them off that wave, and average out some damage, average out some attack rolls and stuff like that, and it felt neat. It felt like a cool departure from laying a bunch of miniatures down and then spending the next 18 hours adjudicating that. Yeah.
Which I did not want for you guys after the cleanliness of the previous fight. I figured your characters are up on the hype. You know where you're at. You're very strong. You guys were, as far as, abilities, health, and spell pool, you guys were doing fine.
Yeah.
So I didn't see it as something that was going to be a hard turn. And you guys could have just as easily said, we're bailing.
Yep.
Or we're hunkering down, or we're doing something else to handle it, and you didn't. You decided to try and push through it.
And as a storyteller, you read the room, you read the mood of the scene, and you kept it rolling. So it was really good. And before we get started into the tonight's big topic,
sure.
I want to just give a real big shout out to my love, Sean.
Aw.
Tomorrow is his birthday. It's close enough, and I have a microphone, so y'all get to hear me wish him happy birthday and all
Well, happy birthday from the entire conclave. So
speaking of games, now not last time we played, but the time before.
Yes,
we
virtually
had a little bit of conflict break out at the table.
We did.
To give a little context, we have essentially two subgroups within my players. One group, which I will call the A team, likes to just play fast and loose, play a little adventurous, not quite kick down the door without a second thought, but they understand that no plan survives contact with the enemy, and they don't put a lot of stock in just planning ahead. They just want to move the adventure forward and see what the next part of the story is.
Right.
We've got our B team, though, which is basically yourself and Sean, mostly, that do like to meticulously plan. You have a lot of really cool abilities on your character sheets. You like to use those abilities in fun and inventive ways. But sometimes this can go into an hour or more longer planning sessions because you're trying to convolute ways to use those abilities in an absolute optimal Rube Goldberg machine of events to have everything come out perfectly in your favor. And sometimes A team and B team don't get along. It really grates on A team that B team can spend this much time of everybody's precious time planning and stuff like that, and B team can get a little ornery, or A team can get a little bit ornery about it.
Yes.
This came to a head in my game, and someone said that A team was acting like a bunch of assholes, and feelings were hurt.
Yes.
Feelings were hurt, and it was a moment we all kind of had to like take a beat.
No, it was a true conflict at the table.
And so the reason I wanted to spell kind of all that out is to kind of punctuate the beginning of this with, we have both been storytelling for over 25 years.
Oh God, yeah.
We've been in countless games over countless systems with countless numbers of friends. And even as recently as a month or two ago, conflict like this can break out at our table.
Yeah.
So, I kind of want to stress that, like, before we even move into this isn't like experienced people trying to tell newbies how to, like, everybody needs this lesson.
Yeah. Sometimes you
even
need
us, we needed this lesson.
Yeah, and it almost is harder when you are that connected. Like, if it's just a random group that you're hanging out with on occasion, maybe at your, local game store, and you're playing, once a week, or even just a drop-in, conflict, you can kind of brush off certain things and be like, next time it'll be better, or I won't have to deal with that person, or whatever, and you can kind of roll with it. But if it's a group you want to keep going with, and you want to stay connected with because you like aspects of it, it's one thing. But if it's another thing, if it's been, 10 plus years of friendship on top of, months of playing a constant game, and then the things you forgive because they're your friends outside, that you've got connections with them beyond the table, and so you forgive and you look over things until something snaps, until something gives.
And I would say there's also the complication of, if you hang out with your gaming friends outside of gaming, then the stress at the table can get brought into your outside friendship.
Yep, it definitely can.
And vice versa. Your outside tensions, like if you get in an argument, like if you play with a coworker and you get in an argument at work, and then you have to sit with them at the table Thursday night.
Yeah, or worse, I have heard one of my coworkers is now my manager.
Oh,
and we play Thursday night games.
Yeah.
So it changes the dynamic. It can make it very challenging. On the other hand, it can also work. You can get very comfortable with those people because of that.
Right. So, we are here to talk to you tonight about conflict resolution.
Yes.
This is different from our show that we did 2 weeks ago.
Where we were talking about in-game
conflict. This is purely like, none of this goes in-game. This is purely players getting angry with other players.
Yeah, some of it, I will say this, some of it is about in-game stuff, in the sense of what might be happening being taken out of game.
Well, sure,
to the
but
players.
how the game is being played, being as a catalyst between hurt feelings between players, is different, though.
True.
And I want to just start this discussion by saying that the storyteller is a player.
Yes.
So when we say players, we are including the storyteller in this, because it really doesn't matter. We're all essentially people at the table playing the same game.
Yeah.
And so the station of storyteller doesn't really matter as much.
No.
In a lot of these instances. So, what conflicts? What conflicts constitutes at the table? What constitutes?
I think
conflict.
The first thing that most people think of that's the easiest thing are rules debates.
Yeah.
And the debate part of that gets challenging.
It does, because both people want to be right.
Yeah, or believe strongly that they are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the debate side of it comes in. But at the same time, there's the age-old, like, I'm going to debate you, but your point is mute because I'm the GM and I can just make a decision.
Moot.
Yes.
But, yeah, and I would say that's gotten a lot worse in the age of social media, when someone can be like, "Well, I don't care what you say. Jeremy Crawford said that the ruling is this on a tweet in 2018."
Also, that's not what Matt Mercer does.
That's also not how Matt Mercer does it, or whatever. But
right.
it's like, okay, I'm the storyteller. I'm the one who says how the rules play out here. So if you don't like it, we can discuss it after the game. But that's my on-table ruling.
Yeah.
I don't really give a crap what Matt Merles or Jeremy Crawford or Matt Mercer does.
Yeah. Or Coville or any number of the other ones. So.
Exactly. I know sometimes, like, like I said, that the tactical decisions taking a lot of time. That's a big one that I've seen, not just at our table, but in many other tables where you want to plan things to death, and people just they don't want to sit there and do a 3-hour long planning session.
Right.
You've even seen you see that happen on Critical Role too.
Yeah.
Travis Willingham is famous for being the big button pusher on that show, and people will get into big okay, well, we could do this and we could do that. Well, what if we did this? And you'll just see Travis be like, okay, I kicked down the door. I pushed the button.
Right.
I do whatever. I am the inciting incident. We're going now. Mm-hmm. Because he gets bored, and rightly so.
Yep.
You made a note here, players making comments after game, the storyteller or other players about how someone was acting, basically crap talking.
Yeah.
Behind people's back and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Always creates a lot of sour attitudes.
Yeah, and I mean, there's one that I've seen as a commonality, and that's the players who want to reschedule the whole game because something else in their life is important, but also the game's important to them, but they don't think it's as important for everyone else to have their time. So they'll want to reschedule, but not necessarily fit the other schedules of the other people because it's their game.
Yeah.
And I'm not even talking about the storyteller wanting to reschedule. That's a whole nother thing altogether. But
I've got something going on that day. Oh, okay, so we can reschedule to maybe the next weekend. Actually, I have something going that day. Well, that's okay. We can just play without you.
Without the other person.
Oh, so it's okay to play without them, but we have to reschedule for you.
Yep. I've seen that. Yep. Those who don't role play like you, or consider your roleplay the wrong way.
Your fun is wrong.
Yeah.
Now, that's a double-edged sword.
Right.
Because sometimes you get people who are, the snooty, your fun is wrong sort of, no, you're doing D&D wrong. But on the other hand, then you've also got people who do RP disruptively at the table. And their RP really is wrong because they need to stop. You know?
And I think that kind of lends into the people who deliberately disrupt roleplay of other players because there's a vendetta maybe there or a revenge there. Even the people who join games to revenge the DM, because they don't like their DM style or they think that they should be taken down.
Yeah.
If you're going into a game antagonistic, which I am 100% culpable for in my earlier days, I've played games with DMs just to mess with them.
I think I've done that. I have done that before, but it's always been the I'm quitting at the end of the night. But
God, yeah.
But tonight I'm going to be salty about it.
Yep, exactly.
Before I quit.
Exactly.
Let's see here. Oh yeah, here's another one. Players getting defensive or silent because or outright leaving because they feel put on the spot.
Yep.
They came to play D&D, but they don't want to participate.
At the same time, they're not prepared for it. They didn't know that they were that this was part of it.
Right.
They didn't see it this way.
You just want to roll some dice, but you don't want to actually interact with anything. And
again, they want to be part of Critical Role. They just don't want to be part of Critical Role.
Yep.
And that's, I always find those, they don't realize that they have to be involved, that they are part of the story.
Yeah.
It's a challenging place to sit.
And I think kind of along that line, I know this one for both you and I has caused some friction between players and ourselves.
Yeah.
Is players showing up to our games unprepared to play the game.
Yeah.
Asking them to do things like know the rules, know their character's abilities, prepare their spells, understand how their magic items work, things like that.
Yeah, I think DMs who have players like that feel more frustrated because they've spent sometimes days preparing.
Oh, yeah.
And bringing things together and hosting and getting everything ready, only to have a player come in and be like, I'm sorry, I'm not ready. Not sorry. I'm just going to play.
Yeah.
And be kind of here.
And it's we know, we take all this time to prepare how everything in the game system works, and we need to be able to adjudicate all of the rules. And it's you've got a wand of magic missiles. All you have to do is read the 3 lines of how that wand of magic missiles works.
Yep.
It's right there on your character sheet.
Yep.
Why is that harder for you to do than me doing all of my game prep in general and knowing the system backwards and forwards, And then players get salty about that. Well, I don't know these things. Well, why not? It's, And so that
Yep.
can
You already feel it.
You'll get salt on both sides because the player will get snippy with the storyteller for asking them to do these things.
Yep.
You know, and I know we're all busy, but like, come on.
Yeah,
You know?
I mean it's a simple ask.
Yeah.
But it has to be an ask. We'll get to that. But
Yep.
And then the whole issue, regardless of the way you look at it, bringing outside conflict in. Whether it's your stress from work, whether it's stress of another player, whether it's stuff that just happened, you know, any number of things, bringing it at the table or not acknowledging that you're bringing it to the table and still playing with it clearly as the elephant in the room that everyone is feeling.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, a lot of times it is easier to just bow out.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't do it because you've got to game.
Yep. And you know, it's difficult to reschedule, especially when you're all adults and you got, you know, things going on. Like, I mean, trying to schedule our game, I've got my session 0 coming up August 7th or something like that. And like, I was amazed I was able to wedge that in August because we're booked.
Mm-hmm.
All of us are booked through August.
Yeah.
Like, you wanted your next game, it's going to be 2 months away, you know?
Yeah, it's not until the beginning of September.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, and then when you think like, well, I've just got a crappy attitude today, I'm going to scrap the entire game.
Right.
Ask them to reschedule around me.
Right.
Or maybe I can just tough through it.
Right.
But then you bring that crappy attitude to the game and you're sitting there all sullen and withdrawn and snippy and all one word answery.
Yeah.
You know, and you bring that vibe to everybody else.
Yeah. And
So.
I think that this kind of then allows us to kind of break through a few of these and talk about how to handle them. I think that one, if we want to work backwards in order a little bit, in that is preparing yourself. Like, if you're getting dressed because you know you're going out to dinner with friends and it's something you're looking forward to, you know, you shower, you dress, you prepare yourself. You're like, I'm going to go out with my friends. I'm going to have a good time. You know, I had a kind of a bad day. I'm going to let them know that. But at the same time, I'm also going to try and leave that behind.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do something about it. That's the attitude you need to bring to gaming. It's no different.
Look, there have been plenty of times, especially when I was dealing with really depressive episodes and stuff like that, where I showed up to your place practically in tears just because I was just so anxiety and depression ridden on the drive over.
Yeah.
And but I leaned into the game and I allowed the game to be my distraction and my elevation away from those troubles.
Right.
You know, and so you got to let go of it if you're doing that. That's the trick.
Yeah.
You have to let go of it.
Yeah, but you have to acknowledge that you have it, and sometimes that's one of the hardest things to do. One of the hardest things is to recognize, like, you know, I've gotten myself wrapped up in all this stress, but I'm not realizing how much I'm carrying it with me and dropping it off into other people's hands.
Exactly. And if you do drop it off in other people's laps, then you need to handle that. You need to be an adult and stand up and take responsibility for it.
So, straight up, be mentally prepared. That when you're stepping in, that whether it's your situation or someone else's situation, it's going to suck.
Yeah.
Like, you've got to handle one way or the other.
Right. Because the only other option other than not handling the conflict when it breaks out at your table is avoiding it.
Yeah.
And then it is just going to fester.
Yes.
It is just going to, there's going to be resentment. That resentment will build. People will see it wasn't handled, and they'll resent that it didn't get handled.
And they won't talk about it even more then.
Exactly. So, mentally prepare yourself. Say, this is going to suck. We're all going to have an adult conversation and rip the Band-Aid off.
Yeah, because there's so many times when you're like, oh, my boss, you know, this other coworker's doing these things. Well, have you talked to your manager about it? No, because he's not going to do anything about it. Have you tried? Have you asked him? Well, no, because none of my managers have ever done that before. Okay, well, then you're going to get the same result.
Yeah.
Until you step forward and break the cycle, or try and break the cycle and know the answer, then...
It's that old thing, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Exactly.
Exactly. You will resolve 0% of the problems that you don't address.
Right.
Or that you do address. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Nope, we're with you.
You will not resolve a situation unless you address it.
So then, you've now got the de-escalation situation at that point, because you're in it at some level, whether it's the breadth of the issue, whether it's you bringing up the issue, whether it's, something that got misheard, something that got misunderstood, something that was clearly not meant to come out in the way that it did, or you're recognizing that it's starting to come out of control, or you're recognizing someone else's situation is kind of control. as all things do happen, we tend to raise voices.
Yep.
And some people either carry that voice and raise it, or other people just shut down. Either way, that is not a proper response. That's you're gaining the same strength issues. You're still butting against each other.
Yeah, I mean, in any situation which emotions start getting heightened, you're going to start bumping up into the fight, flight, or freeze responses. Where a lot of times, especially if it's just verbal, especially if it's just among friends, you're gonna pick fight because you see yourself as equals to these other people, and you're going to try to stand up for yourself against what you see as them being wrong, and so fight's gonna come out. And
the monkey effect.
As emotions get a little higher, you're going to start raising your voice, you're going to start using dirty language, you're going to start calling people insults, things like that. Your flight people are going to be like, I don't even want to be part of this, and walk away from the table.
Still
possibly
escalated.
Walk away from the game.
Yeah. And friends.
And removing themselves from any resolution is
Correct.
the thing.
Because it's too stressful to meet that resolution.
Exactly.
Yep.
But by not being part of the resolution, they're not helping resolve the situation, And, of course, the freeze people are the people who just kind of shut down.
Yep.
And
it's a form of flight.
It's a form of flight. But yeah, if you feel you can't get away, you'll typically freeze instead.
Yeah. And
become the smallest target you possibly can.
Yep.
So you want to de-escalate the situation. Obviously urge people to lower your tones. Guys, let's just keep this on a civil level. You want to try to, urge them to not throw insults. Keep it to factual, statements addressing actual issues. And one of the ones that I like is encourage people to use I statements.
Yeah, that was pretty common.
It sounds like a cliche because you see it in a lot of like therapy scenes and TV shows and stuff. Let's try to use I statements, but it's super helpful because it makes you focus on yourself and your own involvement in the conflict.
Yeah.
Without making assumptions about what the other... Like, you're not trying to put words in another person's mouth. Well, you said this, you meant that, you did this. I perceived you here to say this. I perceived you meaning this. At which point that allows you to say, well, I didn't mean this.
Right.
I meant that. Oh, now suddenly I see why...
Yep.
This was all a misunderstanding.
Also, just forcing people to use I statements literally pushes them back to the front of their mind because instead of it becoming a defensive, monkey brain, quick response, gut instinct, sometimes our programmed responses, what we were taught as children, early in our life, how we're supposed to respond to things, whether it's aggressively, tactily, defensively, whatever, it forces you to kind of reset for a second and be like, well, I can't say that because I'm using a you statement,
Yeah.
And so you have to recalculate everything.
Yeah.
And that recalculation sometimes is just enough of a reset to start pulling you out of your monkey brain and back into your frontal lobe.
Yeah.
Enough to recognize where you're at. And I've watched it happen. I've watched people just kind of shift their whole frame of thought on that.
It also, in a way, centers you. Because it forces you to take stock of your own emotions, placing all of your focus on yourself and your own situation, your own emotional state of being, and such like that. Suddenly, you're now kind of taking stock of like, well, what ammunition do I have to throw into this argument? And you're like, okay, I'm feeling this, I'm feeling that, I did this, I think this, and suddenly you're like, oh, okay.
And
it's almost a little zen.
I've watched a lot of people go from zen to immediate regret, but defensive regret.
Yeah.
And just want to backpedal and run away from the situation, which, again, is a flight response that's common.
Sure.
The trick is keeping through that situation.
You're ashamed because you realize you were the instigator of the situation. And, and you don't, it does take a big person to say like, hey guys, that was my bad. I'm really sorry for snapping.
Yep.
But it's necessary.
Yeah.
You need to be able to just stand up and be like, all right, I own this one. I apologize.
But you got to get down. Once you've gotten to that I statement even level, sometimes it's good to just pause right there.
Yeah.
Like break for 5, 10, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Get yourself some water, maybe go to the bathroom, grab something to eat maybe. The whole joke of, do you need a Snickers bar? is a thing.
It's actually a thing, yeah.
It's totally a thing. There are so many times when I've looked back at events and been like, I think I was just hungry.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know where I was at that moment in time, but after I ate, I was okay.
What do they say? If you hate everyone, eat something.
Right.
If you think everyone hates you, take a nap.
Right.
And if you hate yourself, take a shower.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Again, you just need time. You need to step away from the situation.
Yep.
And I think all of those are really good things, but I think the best thing that sometimes you can do as a perspective person in these situations is remind the people at the table, we're all friends. We're all friends. We're all friends.
Yes.
And that sometimes just has to come back around, because knowing that, getting that back into the pool can remind everyone, like, hey, this is okay.
Yeah.
We can work through this.
Friends have disagreements.
These are just words.
Yeah.
These are just words.
Emotions happen. We all have them. Friends say words. Sometimes those words don't hit the friends quite the way that we want them to.
Correct.
And stuff like that.
Yep.
But the important thing is not that we don't hurt our friends, but that we take our responsibility for hurting our friends, and that we work to make things better afterwards.
Yeah.
I think the big thing to the walk away and take a break, have a Snickers. We're not sponsored by Snickers, by the way.
Not in the least.
But get yourself a snack, go to the bathroom.
Right.
Kind of cool yourself, calm yourself, but also see to your personal needs.
Mm-hmm.
Is agree to come back after the break.
Always.
Like,
come back to the negotiations table, because any good negotiator will tell you that no matter how hot the situation gets, when you break, you come back. You don't break the negotiations table.
And set those expectations, too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, we are going to take a 10-minute break.
Yep.
Okay? We will meet back here at 1:30 p.m.,
mm-hmm.
and we'll talk about this. But everybody, please see to your own personal needs. Take a breather. Collect your thoughts. And we'll reconvene then. Yeah.
Agreed. And when you do, it's going to suck.
Uh-huh.
That situation, the however you move through that resolution, whether it is to pause whatever was going on and box it up and say, okay, we're going to handle this later.
Yeah.
Let's move on. Let's just do this and move on. Or you work through it in a timely manner of saying, okay, are we settled enough that we can step forward with this? Mm-hmm. Whether it's a disagreement about tactics or rule or whatever, sometimes you do have to package it up into a smaller negotiation, a compromise, and step on and return to it later. But that stepping is hard.
Yeah.
And it takes everyone being big people to do it.
Yeah. And sometimes you're going to come back from your 10-minute break, your 20-minute break, whatever, and the situation is going to still be too hot. You're gonna come back, and people are going to still be upset with each other. Heated words are still going to be being said. People are just, maybe there just wasn't enough time to pull yourself out of it or whatever, and that's fine. Like, at that point, maybe just adjourn the game. Clearly, it's not going to happen. People aren't going to be having fun, so don't force it.
Right.
Just walk away, give it a few days, but again, make sure you come back to it.
Yeah, nobody leaves the game.
Right.
Because of this situation.
Check back with your friends the day after. Check back with them 2 days after. I remember doing that with you and the A-team.
Yep.
I was like, okay, I know the A-team said that they weren't gonna, that they were upset with you, and that they were not really willing to talk to you at this moment.
Nope.
Which was kind of big, because you and the A-team are pretty
tight.
Pretty tight.
Yeah. And we still are now.
So I was a little concerned.
Yep.
But. And then I checked back a day or two later, and I was like, have you had a chance to say this? Like, oh, yep. Me and the A-team worked it out, and we are...
there was still tension?
There's still tension. There's still hurt feelings. Like, it didn't make it go away.
No.
But at least you two came to an understanding that it was... You were hot-headed because of some stress from work and stuff like that was bleeding into your game and stuff like that.
Way more than I expected.
You did not realize how far it had bled into your attitude and your vibe. You snapped.
Yeah, I monkeyed right out.
And that's what came to. But at the same time, though, we also looked at the root cause.
Yeah.
We said, okay. So clearly, I mean, on one hand, we talked about how your work stress was bleeding into your game.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Stuff happens.
Yeah.
But at the same time, what was the inciting incident that caused the stress to escalate to that point?
Yep.
And that was another one of these planning sessions that was just going on and on and on.
Yeah.
So we got to talking as a group, hardcore, about like, okay, how do we keep planning sessions to a minimum and make everybody feel involved?
Yeah.
And make
it was a great compromise.
And it was an amazing compromise, and I think it's a game mechanic that everybody needs to use.
Mm-hmm.
We brought it up earlier. It's the apples to apples method.
Yeah. I don't want to get into it because we've got a lot
all
more
right,
to
all right,
cover.
all right, all right, all right.
But I think it's good. We went into it. Go back, listen to the other episode.
We talked about the inciting incident as well as what caused the stress overflow.
Yeah, and it was the compromise that seemed that happened afterward, even about the inciting incident, that made everything work out and come together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. No, I agree. 100%.
Absolutely. And next game session afterwards, I think the proof was in the pudding.
Well, 100%.
Everybody had a great time.
Yeah. But, I mean, even just that step back in is that finding how you can check everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Find the people who clearly need time to relax, or need something to fidget with, or need just a few moments, or need a little bit of food, or need a little bit of water, and help them.
Mm-hmm.
Give them what they need to be able to recover and be part of the situation.
Yeah, we had another player that was just being very surly.
Yeah,
a lot of times during game.
Yeah,
and like literally putting out a snack tray solved that entire problem.
Yeah. I every game now will make sure if I am with my group, there will always be food for everyone to munch on, because I don't know where we're at coming to the game, but that is one thing I can always take care of. Food and water will always be available.
Yep.
It is not that much for me to take care of, and even if it's not my game, I will make sure it's available.
Yeah.
And keep an eye out for that, because some people will get involved and forget where they're at.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Rob.
Yes.
This all sounds like it sucks.
It does.
How do we stop this from happening in the first place? What are some methods to kind of cut this all off at the pass, be a little proactive about conflict resolution so you don't have to ever get to the point where you're telling people to take a break and walk away and stop, shouting epithets at each other?
I think one of the biggest things is setting expectations.
Yeah.
I mean, as a storyteller, you're doing that. But I think as a group, it's good to do that. If you come in and a storyteller's not setting expectations on rules, what's expected, how players should interact with each other, what you're good with. I mean, sometimes it's as simple as saying, hey, we're going to be playing this pulp adventure game. There's going to be mobsters and some other stuff. There's a ruling class that treats everybody like shit. And you could just be like, time out. Can we not have slavery in this? Can we just not do that?
Yeah.
I don't want to know about people being bound up or gagged, or can we just avoid all that?
There's plenty of ways of making someone a big bad evil guy without trading people as property.
Right.
Yeah.
Or treating them like crap and kicking them around on chains and stuff. I don't need that. Having that as a boundary and expectation when the game starts, the storytelling will be like, I don't know, okay, yeah, but I got that.
That's one of the big reasons why you'll never find like racism or like overt racism, sexism, or homophobia as a plot device in any of my games.
Yep.
There's way too much of that in real life.
Yep.
Way too much of that in real life. So my villains will be evil. They will want to conquer the world and maybe burn it in flames. But you know what? If a same-sex couple shows up, he supports them.
Yep. In my case, I do not have bullying. It is something I abhor and avoid. Like, yeah, every major, early 80s movie of the, brawny guy kicking around the scrawny guy who eventually wins over everything in some way. I hated all of that. It just stresses the heck out of me.
I'll never bully a player, but I will have one NPC bully another because everybody loves punching the bully.
And there's a certain aspect of that I'm okay with it, but I won't. I will make it part of the story and not part of a scene. So it'll never be something direct that the players will ever interact with. They'll never have a direct bully. I've had bullies in my game, definitely, but it's always been something that was clearly identifiable as that's what's going on, and without me instigating the words and forcing it.
Yeah.
So,
but we've all got our lines to cross,
our triggers as well,
our triggers and stuff like that,
and recognizing sometimes that some people don't have a voice for their triggers.
Yeah,
and helping into being like, are you going to be okay with that? Are you comfortable with us going on this seafaring voyage that may involve us dropping into the water and possibly gurgling to our death? You're not good with that? Okay,
I'm right up to the point where you said gurgling to death.
Exactly. See, boom. Now we know.
Okay.
Now we know.
Now I know. If you drop into the water, it cannot be the peril that you know.
Correct.
It may be a device that carries you from one place to another, but you will not die in the water. Cool.
Yeah. I read a story about a player who came to, I believe it was a Cyberpunk game, and literally they were going through everybody's lists, like, okay, I need to know from everybody one of your boundaries, one of your triggers, just so that I know not to go anywhere near it. And everybody at the table's looking at each other like, well, I really don't have any. And he's like, I'm sure there's something you have. Just think about it. If it comes up at session, before our session 0, please let me know. You send it to me in a note and whatever. And at his session 0, one of the players had just been really quiet and had not said anything. And he's playing the rigger of all things. And
so a rigger, real quick,
yes.
is someone who uses like cybernetics and stuff, that virtual reality, to control multiple like drones and vehicles.
Yeah. The wheelman, if you will, in most cases.
Yeah.
And he flat out sat down at the table and said, and he was a young guy. He was just like, I don't want any improvised weapons anywhere along our path that I'm driving. I don't want you to, if something explodes, it better be something that I recognize. It could be, make it a freaking missile, make it something else, but literally don't just tell me the side of the road explodes.
Yeah.
And they're all like, oh, like we're talking like, roadside bomb. He's like, yeah, those exact words, never, ever. And they were like, okay, yeah, I can work with that. And it wasn't until about 10 or 12 sessions in that they were doing a road chase, and the DM was just like, so you guys are cruising along, everything seems to be going well, and Chopper comes out of nowhere, comes over the edge of the rise and fires 2 missiles in on you as an ambush, and just decimates the road in front of you. Please make a tactical save. And they're like, oh dude, that's like, we should have been able to catch it on radar. And the player who's the rigger's like, okay, just makes his rolls, fails, they end up tumbling off of it. And he's like, okay, and then you guys are gonna pick up next session recovering out of the rubble. You'll make some rolls and have some exhaustion, a few wounds. Just skipped that whole scene.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And the player came to him afterward, I think a day later, and was just like, I want to thank you for just stopping and restarting the game. He's like, yeah, I don't want to dive into this, but I want to know the edge of it. He's like, oh, my brother died from a roadside bomb. And he was like, oh, crap, I am okay, that 100%. He's like, no, you handled that perfectly. Yep. Thank you. Yep. It was stressful right up to the moment that you told me what was going on. And I'm like, that is where boundaries help everyone. And that was somebody who'd never played with that guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So setting proper expectations, not just for like triggers and stuff like that, but also, like you said, like little things like, what do you bring to the table? How prepared are you expected to be for the game? Are you expected to know the rules for the game, et cetera, et cetera?
What's the level of roleplay?
Yeah, what's the level of roleplay? Exactly. Are we just shysting around while we crawl through a dungeon, or are we doing this?
Yeah.
Or is this improvised theater?
Right. Is this improvised theater? Are you expecting us to pull our stories? Kind of a thing.
So managing those expectations is good. And then also check yourself first.
Always.
You're always your first point of contact to any conflict. If you find yourself getting upset, angry, anxious, tense, take a moment to once you've recognized that, take a step back.
Yep.
And just, if you need to excuse yourself from the table, like I said, grab a bite to eat, go to the bathroom, just splash some cool water on your face or something. But make sure you're managing yourself as a point of contact with the conflict, because you're the only thing you can control there, truly.
Yeah. And I think the other part of that is being prepared as any player at the table, storyteller included, all players at the table, being prepared to be the adult in the room. So you check yourself so you can be that adult in the room if you need to be.
Exactly. So if everybody else goes completely feral at each other, at least you can be the one who's like, please, remain seated.
Yes. So.
And the other thing we always harp on,
100%,
always harp on this one, is communication. Is 90% of issues can be resolved just simply by communicating your needs, by communicating your emotions and things like that, and communicating your expectations. you should be comfortable at your table explaining your limits and requesting accommodations.
Yes,
and
100%.
I don't even just mean, things like we were discussing with the triggers and stuff like that. Clearly that's a great example of discussing your limitation. I cannot be exposed to this sort of subject matter, and requesting the accommodation that the storyteller never include that as a story element. Okay, cool. But what about one of our players being hard of hearing?
Yeah. Shift the position at the table.
Having trouble hearing me, especially when I was doing accents in low tones. Find a good spot at the table that was far enough away that they could hear, but not so far that they were struggling to hear. And gave me the feedback that certain accents I was doing for an NPC was difficult to understand. So I've toned those accents down.
Sometimes players just don't have the funds to take care of, copies of things or extra dice or whatever. Maybe they just, I assure you someone at your table will have a giant bag of dice these days.
Exactly.
And probably will be willing to share some of those dice out at times.
Yeah, we're not salty with you for not bringing dice because you didn't bring dice. We're salty because you have dice. You can bring your dice. You just didn't.
Right.
Okay, if you don't have something or something like that, or if you can't afford it or whatever, or if you lost it tragically in a fire, I don't know. But, if something is impeding you from it, that's fine.
Yeah.
Just ask.
Yep.
We all got plenty of dice. Whatever, you lost your book, you lost your character sheet, something like that, something happened. I mean, look, I might be a little salty, try to be more careful, please.
Yeah.
But, come on, stuff happens.
It does.
It's okay.
Yep.
I'd say, pausing before things get blown out of proportion.
Yes,
is
just
the big thing.
Being that adult in the room to be able to help people pause, or recognizing within yourself, it's time to pause.
Yeah.
Listening for that breath and going, this breath needs to be longer than 10 seconds.
Yeah, exactly. And so stopping them before they can get escalated into, hurtful statements and such like that. And then, like we were talking about earlier, once you identify those breakdown points, see what can be done to address them.
Yeah.
I mean, like we said earlier, your work stress boiled over, but it boiled over in a situation because planning was getting out of hand.
Right.
And so, I mean, there's only so much we can do about the work, but the planning we can address.
Yep. Definitely.
If that's a stress point, by all means, let's talk about that. Players get grumpy when they don't eat. Have snacks. Planning sessions getting out of hand, streamline your planning sessions. Find a way to limit the amount of time and value everybody's input. Somebody coming to game with baggage already, take some pregame time to check your players. Okay, guys, how are we doing? Does anybody need to blow off some steam for 20 minutes before we get going here? So that you can just vent and be cool about it once dice hit the table.
Yeah, it's amazing what you can do if you just let somebody roll for a half an hour on letting them go.
Yeah.
While you're preparing something or doing something else.
You might get a little behind schedule, but I guarantee your gaming will be much better for it. For just letting them get that
steam
out.
release valve. Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. No, it definitely helps. And when it's all said and done, remember to come back. Remember to bring everything back together. Don't encourage people to come back, even as another player. Don't just walk away. That is only going to make things worse. Whether it was a horrific situation and maybe someone does need to leave the table, don't make that the end of it. Make the reconciliation and recognition and work through what really happened at the table.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I would say also, as a storyteller, especially if you're not part of the conflict and you're trying to mediate between your players, encourage them to focus on that common goal. To work together. Essentially, it's almost like putting. You see those pictures of the get along shirt of the two kids jammed inside of one of Dad's t-shirts together. So
they're forced.
This is our get along shirt. You can kind of do that in a gaming standpoint of okay, who's taking first watch? Okay, Rhaegar and Theoden, you're on watch together.
Yeah.
Talk.
Yeah.
What do you talk about during this watch in this quiet night?
Yeah.
And now there's a moment where you two have to role play, and it pulls you out of your personal conflict and back into, hopefully pulls you out of your personal conflict and pulls you back into role play.
Yeah.
You know.
And sometimes it doesn't work out, but for the most part, if you can just take a minute, you'd be surprised.
Yeah.
You'll be really surprised. And it makes you better in the end. There were some interesting things through my research that I found. And one of them, a couple of them came right off of Reddit, and I think it was beautiful. And there was a comment that had been talking about, regardless of how you feel about games and relationships and the way things in the philosophy and how people are either selfish or societally different. When we come, he's a quote, when we come to the D&D table, the goal of making sure that other people are there to have as much fun as you do, and everyone is playing that way, then it's impossible to consistently have the wrong kinds of tension in your game.
Yeah.
So it's the whole do unto others as you'd have do unto you in the gaming sense.
Yeah.
Make sure everyone, including you, is enjoying the game.
Yeah.
And if everybody's working toward that, you're not going to have that tension.
We talk a lot about the assumption of friendship, and this is really where it comes down to is everybody at your table is assumed to be your friend.
Yep.
You want what is best for them. You want them to have fun.
Yep. Everybody is a GM in that story. Everyone's a storyteller.
Yeah, if you just approach all of your issues with that in mind, that this is my brother, this is my sister, this is my sibling, to keep that in mind, that and their best interest is in mind, you're going to do great.
And another part of it was that, and that comes up a lot, is that there's a lot of burden that sits on the DM's shoulders. As a player, the best thing you can do is help them in any way.
Yeah.
They're taking the time to craft, build stuff, pull things together, sometimes host at their location, present everything in a meaningful way, be prepared for craziness to happen, and still present the story. They're not required to do that job.
Mm-hmm.
That they are not required to be your entertainment source. They're not getting paid for this. I mean, sometimes they are, but it's a rarity. In most cases, they're just another friend who's taken that seat to make your day better and enjoy something.
Yeah.
Remember that.
Yeah.
Except that you have to be responsible for paying that forward back to them and saying, I'm going to help. And the way I'm going to help is I'm going to make my part of my session that much better. I'm going to help everyone else enjoy this.
I'm going to be part of the solution.
That's right.
Yep.
I think it's one of the hardest things for players to recognize, because there are so many selfish stories out there. So many.
Yeah.
So, we have some good questions, though.
Yeah. Yeah, we do have some good questions. So we're going to start off with Overwatch. Overwatch asks, what is the best way to make sure that the adversarial relationship between the NPCs and player characters does not end up feeling like an adversarial relationship between the DM and the players themselves? So how do we keep in character from spilling into out of character? Is what I'm reading this question to be.
I think the biggest thing that's worked for me is communication.
Yep.
And it's a balance of connective NPCs and disconnective. Like, I've been in games where basically every single NPC that we communicate with is either out to get us or not there to help us, and it's always a struggle. Like, everything is a struggle.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And it does feel like the DM's basically against you at that point. On the other hand, I tend to run games where I have heroes and villains both within my group, within my NPC rosters.
Yep.
These are people who, some of these people are going to be great friends, and the other people are just going to be these horrific, monsters, and sometimes there's going to be some great people who are just kind of doing their own thing. So that it's never truly that level. But your villains, you're going to communicate afterward about and saying, like, hey, did you guys like him? Do you hate him? Do you really hate him? Okay. I'm glad you guys hate him. And you're cheering them on through the hate.
Right. I think that's probably one of the big important takeaways, is to be fans of your players.
Yeah.
And so when build your villain up, sure, but then when they in some way thwart the villain or insult the villain or get one up on him in one way or another, be a fan of that.
Yeah.
Cheer that on. Reward that with an inspiration or a Benny token or a fate chip or something. And let them know that you are enjoying their conflict with the villain rather than just enjoying their suffering at the hands of the villain.
Exactly.
The other one I would say too is make sure that you're checking in with your players.
Mm-hmm.
I think we mentioned this in our character versus character conflict episode.
Yes.
Of sometimes you just need to break from the RP.
Yeah.
If you're reading a little bit of like too much genuine emotion, especially negative emotion, break RP and just say, "Hey, we're cool, right?
Yeah.
Like you understand this is just the villain talking and not me, right? Like, yeah, no, we're cool. Okay, cool. Game on.
Yep.
But just that real quick check-in can be everything you need.
A savior.
Because God forbid you get a what? No, I thought you were really mad at me. No. It's cool. Let's recalibrate.
No, I think it's perfect. Knox had one. It seems more like party conflicts come from the good old-fashioned battle of good versus evil. Sometimes, strange as it sounds, players don't see some of the choices they make as evil when they clearly are. Does it make sense that maybe Game Zero you kind of explain the taboo actions to players and maybe have established a way that certain player types, good or evil, or even why the party's together? Or just let it happen organically as the campaign goes on?
I don't think so. We talk a lot about the importance of session zeros.
Yes.
And don't get me wrong. I think session zeros are super important, and I think laying ground rules and expectations and stuff that during session zero is likewise super important. What I'm going to say though is that session zero shouldn't be the only place that you reinforce these expectations. Right. I've seen so many times in horror stories where things go off the rails in game session like 4 or 5 or 6 or whatever, and the response is, well, we discussed this in session 0.
Yeah. No, it needs to be reminded.
You should know. Well, first off, yeah, we might have discussed it in session 0, and we might have agreed to it in session 0, and now it's happening, and now it's uncomfortable. But, first off, me saying I'm uncomfortable with this should be enough for us to at least have a discussion about it.
Right.
Whether anything changes or not, you can't just be like, you agreed, the contract is signed, you're bound.
Right. And I think there's something to be said for the gray areas and gray moralities of certain games and themes, but getting the theme right and encouraging the theme.
Yeah.
And reiterating the theme for the first couple of sessions to get them comfortable with where they're at is a huge part of that.
Yes.
I don't think it's a negative thing for new role players in a new setting to remind them of what is good and what is bad. Because one of the things in 7C is killing someone is a terrible thing. Duels happen all the time, but it's never a duel to the death.
Yeah, I'll be straight up with you. Like my character in your 7C game has a real stigma because she assassinated somebody.
Like straight
pulled
up.
Out. There were pirates trying to board our ship. They meant to kill us all.
They did.
So I pulled out my rifle, and before their bosun or whatever ever got on our ship, I put a musket ball in his head.
Yep. Ended him.
Split his wig right in half.
And that whole group.
And everybody on both sides went, "Ooh, what did you do?" I'm like, I shot the man trying to kill me. What's the issue?
Nope.
And I'll tell you straight up, Sarah didn't understand the issue either.
Yeah.
To this day, I still kind of don't.
Yeah.
But you established that it was wrong in game.
Yep.
And so, I mean, I accept that it was wrong. I'm like, this is not Sarah taking a moment to jab at you and be like, what the hell? But yeah, it happens.
No, it does, and it does. Even in seasoned games, you may not catch what you're doing is wrong, but sometimes it takes a recognition like that everybody goes, whoa.
Yeah, it does take some constant, so it takes a fair mix of constant reinforcement and repercussions when it happens.
We may be murder hobos, but never babies.
Right.
Like, who does that kind of a thing?
So our next show is going to be another one of our system spotlights.
Yep.
It's the second Wednesday of the month, so we are once again dipping our toes into that. We are going to be talking about Star Wars RPG, both the Fantasy Flight and the West End Games version as well.
We're going to have some fun with that.
It's seen some evolutions. So you can find us on Twitter at @ST_Conclave, on Instagram @ST_Conclave. Listen to us live every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on mixlr.com/storyteller-conclave. And join us up on the Discord. You can find the link up on our Twitter as well as on our website, storytellerconclave.com.
We'd like to thank our Patreon members who help us keep this show going week after week, especially our name members, Knox in the Box, Sam, the Arcane Asylum, Sparkle Motion Veteran, and Huluvu. We truly appreciate you. Come join us on our Patreon and help us keep going with this. Our pre-show music you might have heard was by Arcane Anthems. You can find that at patreon.com/arcaneanthems. I highly recommend them. Our intro music is Beyond the Warriors by Geefrog. You can find that at geefrog.bandcamp.com or on Google Music. And our outro music, which you're hearing now, is Only Our Footprints in the Sand by Midair Machine. You can find that at freemusicarchive.org.
And a big shout out as always to our families, Vicky and Sean. Happy birthday once again,
Happy birthday, Sean.
Our friends who've sat with us at our tables all these years to give us these good and bad stories to tell you. And you, every single one of our listeners, we love you so much.
Love you guys.
Good night.
Good night.